John. The papers feature the Prime Minister's open letter to Britain all over front pages. There's the Sunday Express, "Dear Britain, get behind my deal and we can get on with Brexit." There's the Observer, "May begs the public, unite behind me on the Brexit deal." And there is the Mail on Sunday, "PM's plea to the people, back my Brexit." But of course, life goes on and lots of people are looking beyond today to what happens next in the House of Commons and the likelihood of the deal being voted down. And the Sunday Telegraph, like other papers, a very interesting story about a secret plan B for Brexit, which is essentially a group of 5 cabinet ministers who want to push the Prime Minister into agreeing a kind of Norway-style EEA closer relationship with the EU if the deal is voted down. You see that again on the Sunday Times there on the front page. New gang of 5 in second cabinet mutiny on Brexit. And because they are very traditional, and this is a Sunday morning, there is a Tory sex story there as well. Lots and lots of other stories to talk about, but we will do lots and lots of Brexit, I think, today. Camilla, this letter, which is kind of unique, I think. I don't remember the Prime Minister writing ever an open letter to the people of Britain like this.
You'd be much better placed to comment than I would, Andrew, with your veteran experience. But no, I don't think we have heard of a letter like this. And the Mail on Sunday here has laid it all out and highlighted the relevant passages. It's interesting that she actually draws on quite an emotional argument, talking about how she's never lost sight of her sense of duty, that she will be campaigning with her heart and soul to win the vote. She even weaponises the quite controversial Brexiteer quote about the number on the bus, about an extra 394 million, so a bit more than the 350 million that we'll have left to plough into the NHS.
For a Remain campaigner back in the day, she sounds very, very Brexity.
She does sound Brexity, but as Glenn Owen and Harry Cole point out in the Mail on Sunday, I like the way they've put this, she will need a Houdini-like political skills to survive. And of course, it's not just that she has to convince the country, but also her cabinet and also the Commons. And the consensus is the vote is not going to pass.
And the current figure, I think, is 91 Tory MPs are saying they're going to vote against it. So she just hasn't got the arithmetic.
OK, but the idea, can I just, a tiny detail, the idea of the Prime Minister, the gall, the absolute gall of going to the country, this is the government that has divided the country with their horrible Brexit negotiations, with their horrible policies, from austerity to the hostile environment. It took a UN expert on poverty to come to the UK and tell us not only how bad things are, but how absolutely in denial the government is over its own blame in that. And for the Prime Minister to then say, "Oh, will you all unite around our deal?" Well, no, we can't. How can we possibly unite around the person that's divided us? It's impossible. It's absurd.
I think it's extraordinary, actually. Who would have thought, despite all the difficulties the Prime Minister's had, that there she is today, signing this document, and we are now within touching distance of leaving the EU. And it was her job, Rachel, to do that, because she's Prime Minister.
She did it badly.
And there was a referendum, and she's done her best to enforce it. Now, it's not
like a mad computer game, isn't it? She gets over one hurdle, jumps over one bridge, there's another explosion, then she turns the corner, and there's more people shooting at her.
But we can now see it. We can almost touch it now that we're nearly out of the EU.
But the other argument, again, is to say that the Brexit vote indicates that we've always been divided on Europe. And in fact, we've always been divided politically. There are some on the left and some on the right. So this whole idea that any deal could stop division, people were always going to be believing in their own thing. We've been split for decades. Why should it be any different in this future?
And the vote in the referendum was 52 to 48, and she's tried to accommodate all sides.
Let's return to the papers. In terms of the pro-Brexit sentiment, there is one key text, I think, in today's papers, which is Martin Howe, QC, in the Sunday Telegraph.
Yeah, he's part of Lawyers for Brexit. He's a long-serving Tory party supporter, but whereas the letter the Prime Minister's writing is appealing to the country to get behind her, he's written a devastating critique of her negotiating style. He says when it comes to caving into EU demands, Theresa May is as flexible as a limp lettuce. There's much more language of the sort. He goes on about Spain now can't wait to plunge the knife in at the point when it will have legal veto over the UK escaping from the backstop. He hates this backstop, which is what the Prime Minister's agreed to, and the EU are the only ones who say when we can leave it.
I find it very hard to work out whether the government has actually conceded anything real over Gibraltar or not. I don't know if anybody has a view on that.
Not sure. She says I stick with Gibraltar to the end.
Very forcibly.
Exactly, but others are saying she's surrendering too much. But that's been the story of the referendum from beginning to end, Andrew.
Well, also, it's indicative of some of the constructive ambiguity going on.
Yes.
That one single document can be interpreted in such an extreme way by both sides.
Rachel Shabi, the Gang of Five story is the one that takes us furthest forward in the news this morning, isn't it?
Yeah, she's apparently, what you were saying earlier is true. She's got plotters to the right of her and plotters to the left of her in her own party. Now it seems that she's got a fresh Gang of Five in second cabinet mutiny. This is coming from Remain ministers.
Led by Philip Hammond, the Chancellor.
Led by Philip Hammond and including Amber Rudd, who want to try and soften the deal. But this actually speaks to the absolute chaos in the government. They are hopelessly, intractably divided over Brexit. They cannot negotiate a Brexit deal with the EU because they cannot negotiate a Brexit deal with themselves.
Well,
that was always the problem from the
of course.
start to the finish. They've signed a deal that her own government, her own party doesn't like and is going to vote down.
And everybody from both sides is saying...
That's a built-in problem with a Conservative government. That's not going to change.
I mean, part of the problem is everyone is saying, we can tweak it this way or tweak it that way. As of this morning, it's too late to tweak it. It's been signed off.
It's legally binding. That's it.
And also there's been this discussion about the fact that the deal itself is legally binding, but the 27-page document of our future declaration isn't, and yet that's the one that makes some of the concessions. Yeah. So it's confusing. It's interesting, though, this whole talk of EEA has rumbled, and there may be more cabinet consensus over an EEA-style approach, just because we've heard figures like Michael Gove, traditionally regarded as a Brexiteer, being aligned to it. So is that where they can find common ground?
And it was Nick Bowles, the Tory MP, he wrote it in the Mail, actually, arguing for a Norway-style solution.
Yeah, it's becoming more popular.
It is becoming more popular, but the one problem will be for a lot of people, it would mean we do not get rid of free movement of people straight away, and that is a red line for many people.
Rachel, lots of other political stories related to this. A lot of people are still hoping for another referendum on that. And there's a very interesting story in one of the papers about talks between the so-called People's Vote campaign and the Labour leadership, because Jeremy Corbyn has always been very, very cautious about this new referendum idea. He's looking to all the pro-Leave Labour voters in the north, I suspect.
So this story is about John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, being in secret talks with the people who are organising around a public vote. Now, if true, it would kind of make sense. Now, you can see why Labour is sticking to its own sequencing over Brexit. If you were the opposition, and you were the Labour Party, you would want to vote down the withdrawal deal because it's rubbish. You would want to then eliminate through Parliament any chances of a no deal, because that's ludicrous. And then you would want to have an election. Of course. If you're the Labour Party, you want not just to negotiate a better Brexit, but you want to alleviate some of the inequalities and the hardships that they're not the only reasons for Brexit, but they definitely have affected the vote. So, of course, you're going to want to do that. That's the logic of being the Labour Party. But it might then be, if the only remaining option to get out of this situation is a public vote, then there is a built-in problem with that sequencing, even though it makes sense. The built-in problem is that you have not prepared the ground. You have not advocated. You have not explained why it's necessary to have a public vote. You haven't talked to your own Labour Leave voters about that. So that's the problem with this particular sequencing. Isn't it also a problem
that McDonnell and Corbyn are both staunch Brexiteers who...
Yeah.
I mean,
no,
this is classic...
They both voted to remain.
This is Marxism, except it's Groucho. Here are my principles, and if you don't like them, here are some others. It's a party management exercise.
This is just ridiculous ambushing of a perfectly logical argument, which I just presented
McDonnell
with you.
McDonnell and Corbyn are aligned on their Euroscepticism with the likes of John Redwood.
Or at least they may be quite shrewdly aware of the very, very large number of Labour voters, particularly in the north and the Midlands, who are pro-Brexit.
They're also truly aware of the fact that Leave won. So if you want to do something else, you have to get a mandate for it, and you have to persuade your own people.
Well, if Leave won, why would you try to undo the vote?
Interestingly, on the referendum, Diane Abbott said only the other day, a key ally of Jeremy Corbyn, she thinks if there is a second referendum, Leave will win with a bigger margin.
Although
and I think she's
all the
probably
polling
right.
suggests
I think she's
otherwise.
probably right.
In all of these shenanigans. People are falling out with each other and shouting at each other. But there's a rather sweet story in the Sunday Times about a rapprochement.
Peter Mandelson, the architect of New Labour, you've got the champion of New Labour on the programme later, Tony Blair, has been bonding with Jeremy Corbyn's enforcer, Seamus Milne. He's his media man. They've been having secret meetings, secret talks. Remember, Peter Mandelson said, I wake up every day with one ambition, to undermine Jeremy Corbyn every single day. So here he is breaking bread with Seamus Milne, who is the eyes and ears of Jeremy Corbyn.
Absolutely fascinating. Thanks all very much indeed for that. Before